to a fresh new edition of ESG A Bridge to Action presented by PwC India in association with Moneycontrol.com. Today we are going to discuss how ESG goals can be embedded in your business strategies and how are companies really transforming and taking over sustainability as a key goal, and how is digital transformation also playing a critical role in this particular journey. Let me welcome on the show two experts who are joining us to give us more insights on this very interesting topic. Let me welcome Kiran Mazumdar Shaw of Biocon and Sambitosh Mohapatra of PwC India. Welcome to the show. But before we start with this very interesting discussion, let's get a special message on sustainability.
Sustainability is becoming a very important area of focus for not only governments and by default countries, but even for businesses. Eventually, the actions that we take today end up either protecting or exposing our future generations, whether it's in the areas of climate, environmental protection. We can actually make active choices in what kind of businesses we fund, we don't fund.
Now, first question to you, Sambitosh. How are companies really responding to this new norm? You have an interface with so many of them. How are they able to navigate this path towards ESG goals?
Thanks, Nisha, for having me over. As you rightly said, over the last 12 to 18 months, ESG has become the new normal, and most of the boardroom conversations are oriented towards that. The why is very clearly established. Right? The why is about the greater set of stakeholders which have emerged, which are amplifying the issues around climate change, finite resources, availability of technology, availability of finance, right? So therefore, that's one ecosystem which is emerging. Second, in the earlier model, ESG was seen as a risk. Now people truly believe that there are opportunities to be leveraged out of it. Okay, so that's the second element. The third element is about sustainability was always seen as an adjacency to the business. Right? Now it is core to the business, and people expect you to change your operating models or supply chains to respond to the new normal. And fourth, and very important, that this is now driving business outcomes. So people are able to establish an improvement in ratings, reputation, brand, valuation. Second, they are seeing a greater license to operate, be it across geographies, customers, price points. Ability to access technology and finance is also possible through if you are strong on ESG. And talent. The next generation wants to work for sustainable companies. So the why is very clearly established. Now the second point is how enterprises are going about it. Right? So there are 5 steps that we normally see enterprises going about. First is about the purpose. Most of them are revisiting their purpose about the reason for their existence and why they are doing business, right? So therefore, that's step number 1. Step number 2, with multiplicity of frameworks and rating agencies, these organizations are now trying to identify outside in and inside out the material elements which are important for them on environment, social and governance aspects, right? And they're trying to do, the third point is about baselining. Where are they in those material elements, and trying to look at what are the industry best practices, what are the global companies doing about it, what is the kind of technology which is available or financing available to do this transition. That's the third point. And fourth, where it is all about action, is on all these material issues, they put out a target on what they want to achieve in 2025, 2030, and then put a robust plan or an initiative list based on return on investment, ease of implementation, impact that it will have. So that becomes quite important. And then they put an implementation framework. Now, after doing all this, and most importantly, you have to communicate this to the set of stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, it is your government, regulator, investors, talent, suppliers, communities that you are operating in, on what you are doing and how you are going to manage this transition over the next 3 to 5 years. I think these are the major 5 steps that we are seeing enterprises doing. With that, I'll pass it on to you, Nisha.
All this is coming out in a big way. But Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, you have been a pioneer, your corporation has been a pioneer in many aspects in terms of leadership in corporate India. How does the purpose of the corporation tie in with the ESG standards, and what is the goal that you have set for yourself?
Let me start by saying that business purpose drives your ESG strategy for sure. And for me as an entrepreneur, I've always been driven by a business purpose that is basically founded on sustainability. You know, when I started Biocon, it was based on environmental sustainability. Today, we are focused on health equity and other aspects of environment, social, and governance. So for me today, as a biopharmaceutical entrepreneur, my sense of business purpose is very much embedded in the greater good of society and the societal impact we can have in terms of health equity. And in that, of course, is also embedded, the way we address our opportunity through environmental sustainability, and of course through the ethical context of governance that we want to embed in all that we are doing. So to me, that what Sambitosh just talked about has been the way we have actually evolved our own ESG. I'm glad that the world is now taking ESG as an important contributor to business and business practices, because I do believe that these are very important aspects of conducting a business, which is finally getting its due recognition.
But there are new ways developing. There are more innovations on ESG in a new world order. So, what is your plan going forward? Are there any enablers or any new targets that you have set for your enterprises?
As a woman, I have always embedded a part of my business purpose in terms of gender equity and other aspects of inclusion. So that's something which I've practiced from day one. In fact, I set up my own company, Biocon, to provide equal opportunities for women to pursue careers. And obviously, in that process, we have developed a very inclusive work culture and an induction culture and a recruitment culture. So that apart, I today am focusing a lot on adoption of technology to basically make ourselves very, very relevant in terms of sustainability. I do believe that technology has a very, very big role to play in sustainability, social and governance aspects of ESG. The second aspect in our case, which is about the social impact we can make in terms of providing affordable access to essential and life-saving medicines, which is what we are all focused on at the
Yes.
Biocon Group, whether it is in R&D, whether it is in manufacturing to make sure that you are providing high quality medicines, whether it is about supporting patients with information and managed care services. I think in all this today, technology can actually provide a very, very strong, um, you know, uh, aspect of these objectives. And then finally, of course, when it comes to governance, I think technology has a huge role to play in ensuring transparency, accountability, and responsibility. So, as an organization, I would like to use technology in our ESG, roadmap, in our ESG policies, in the way we are basically focusing on embedding ESG into business purpose.
So kudos to that. But Sambitosh, of course, as many companies are on this particular journey, there are many enablers at the moment and several challenges as well. How do you pinpoint a few of them and guide the companies in this direction so that they can meet their ESG goals much more effectively?
So, as we interact with the industry, it is about awareness. And half the time, they believe on older notions of losing out on short term bottom line rather than creating value over a longer term period, right? So therefore, I would say the first challenge that we face as we speak in industry is awareness. The second issue is about how soon shall we scale up and whether finance is available. You will have to pilot certain initiatives, subsequent to which, as soon as it reaches a cost competitiveness, then you scale it up. Okay. But the third thing about finance, I think Kiran rightly mentioned, a lot of examples are there globally now where pharmaceutical companies are taking sustainability linked finance to provide access to medicines to low income, middle income kind of countries. So therefore, if you have a very good idea or if you are doing a transition, sustainable finance, green finance is available in the market. And even in India, we see that happening, right? So that's one. And the fourth thing is about communication. As I think, as Kiran rightly mentioned, many companies in India got incorporated with a larger than the business objective, right? It was more about social, giving employment, giving equal opportunities and all. But that narrative was never captured. So what we also see now in the industry is, can we capture what they have done over the last, whatever, from the day they were formed, put it out into the stakeholder ecosystem so that they appreciate and understand. Because if you don't put the narrative out among the stakeholders, you will have constraints of accessing financial capital, human capital to your enterprises. And the last point I would say, I think Kiran beautifully brought it out, is use of technology as a trust builder. Technology can be the differentiator which will build trust into this ecosystem. Because for the financial metrics, over 100 years, we have generated trust, okay, with auditors assuring them. On the non-financial metrics, it is the responsibility of the enterprises to use technology so that they can put out verifiable, measurable data into the ecosystem. And the stakeholders can then respect that, trust that, and genuinely look at it.
All right. So clearly, articulation and also monitoring and using the technology for ESG goals extremely important. But Kiran, you have been in this space for so long, pharma, life sciences. This is one of the front sectors when we deal with crisis situations like pandemic. So very important sector. How do you think that going forward ESG will become more prominent in your sector in terms of even license to operate? And what are the opportunities that lie ahead in the next decade or so from here?
So, Nisha, to answer that question, actually, the healthcare sector has an enormous opportunity to build a very, very strong profile in ESG. Because I think our business purpose is certainly driven by every aspect of ESG, like I just said. And I think Sambitosh also, sort of laid it out very succinctly in terms of saying that, we need to have data to demonstrate all that we're doing in terms of building up our ESG profile. Similarly, you have to think of every aspect of your commercial and manufacturing activities that start making you very conscious of environmental sustainability. And finally, as Sambitosh very rightly said, when it comes to governance, we want to remove subjectivity out of the equation. I think you do need to use technology to bring in objectivity, measurability, and trust through data. I think health equity, ensuring that there's no price gouging, that is often the case in pharmaceutical companies that is talked about, making sure that we have a very ethical approach to health equity. All this is going to count a lot. And I think stakeholders need to be able to assess and evaluate the ESG scores of companies who are walking the talk and ESG companies who are simply ticking boxes by providing some data. So I think these are the kind of challenges that we have to really overcome. And I think all stakeholders must evaluate companies and provide the kind of valuation for companies that do the right thing for the greater good of society.
So very, very important points made by both Sambitosh as well as Kiran on this riveting discussion, a very important one at that at this point as corporate India embarks on its ESG journey. And also remember that there's several new tools coming up which can be incorporated on this particular sustainable journey for the companies. Thank you so much, Kiran, as well as Sambitosh, for joining us with all those thoughts. And with that, it's a wrap on this particular edition of ESG, A Bridge to Action. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.